All right. Home. This is my Beltane May Day inspired paper mache mask. It's mostly paper mache. It's got a little bit of clay, a little bit of cotton, a couple of things here and there, some ribbon. So I filmed the process, and you're welcome to keep watching to see all that if you're interested. And then I'll see you at the end. I'll do a little close up. You can see it more. You can't see it all right now. I mean, you do see it all, but you can't see it up close right now. But it still looks really cool from far away. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create a base for the mask by pressing tinfoil to my face. And this is just getting the general size and shape that I am trying to go for. This isn't going to be something that I'm wearing a lot. It's more of a wall decor piece, so I'm not concerned with it being comfortable. So for the first layer of paper mache, I'm going to use the flour and water method, which is very strong. It's awesome. I haven't done this in years, probably since I was like 12. This is super accessible. It really is just flour and water and any sort of paper scraps you have. It dries really strong. The only concern is if it isn't sealed properly, there is a possibility of it molding in like high humidity. But if you seal it with like a Mod Podge or even just a glue on all of its sides, then you should be fine. So I let that dry overnight, and then I am going in with some tinfoil to bulk up the shape of the mask. This just helps in the long run not weigh the mask down so much. If I were to go in right now with just clay and shape the rest of the mask, it would be very heavy, and also kind of a waste of material. So tinfoil or crumpled up paper and tape, any scraps you have works great. And so that's what I'm doing. I also sketch out just an idea of where things are going to go on the mask, although I end up gluing this over the top, so I don't really know what I was doing here, but we're gonna let it go. Now I am taking stainless steel wire and I am twisting it around itself to create a stronger base for the antlers. Normally in the past when I've made like art dolls or creatures and they have things like antlers or long legs or tails or wings, I would do this, but then I would also coat it in something like a hot glue, so they aren't weighed down by whatever else I add to it. And in this case, I am coating these in clay and a few other little things. And the clay does crack in a few places. So I don't know why my brain didn't take the methods that I've always used and applied it to this project when I'm doing the same exact thing. But in the long run, I should have added more to that wire. Not a big deal. This is, again, for me. And I am also kind of experimenting in the same sense because I haven't done this. I haven't made a mask in so long. So maybe I was just a little excited. But that's a lesson for future Lonnie to remember. And then the ears I just made simply out of cardboard. They're not going to be covered in clay or anything heavy, so I'm not super concerned about them becoming top heavy. They'll be just fine. I'm quickly just adding a little floral wire from the base of the antler up the ear, just so there's a tiny bit of structure to it and not just a piece of cardboard hanging up there. Again, I'm not adding clay to them, but I am going to be coating them in a little bit more paper mache and some cotton, and the wire will just help those things stick. So that's that. So now it's time for the final layer of paper mache. This time I'm using my just simple white glue and distilled water method. Mix it. There's no measuring. I just mix it until it's pretty thin so it's easy to paint on. Because this is going over the mask and not the base of the mask. If it was something that was supposed to be stronger and sort of like the foundation layer, it would be much thicker and probably would have many layers. So because this is just to create a cohesive mask before I start with the clay, the thinner glue is fine. And I'm going all over the mask, everywhere except the antlers, which honestly at this point I should have done the antlers, but everything ends up fine. It ends up looking very cool, and we learn things, which is always good. So we let that dry again for 24 hours, and it is ready now to put clay down. I use the DOS air dry clay. It's like a professional grade air dry clay, and I've used it for years. It has always worked really well for me. Here I mixed it with a little bit of glue, which just helps it adhere to the paper mache a little bit better. It dries really well. It takes paint really well. You can sand it down. It's awesome. And I'm sure there's plenty of really great air dry clays out there, but this one I have never needed to change. So I'm just adding it in thin layers, which is a reason why we did the bulking in the beginning with the tin foil. If I did that with clay right now, it would take so many days because I would have to do it in layers to be able to get it to dry and not crack. So now I don't have to do that. I can just add thin layers and shape smaller areas that the bulking may have missed or the paper mache may have missed, like around the eyes that have been there since the very beginning, because I never forgot to do them. I always remembered. And so I'm adding clay to that area, a little bit on the cheeks, and it's just kind of creating its final form before I can add, I guess, the texture layers. This is like the final shaping. So that's what I'm doing. I also have my little spray bottle filled with water that I always have handy when I'm working with paint and clay, just so I can continue to spray the clay that I'm using and I'm taking from, and that doesn't dry out. And it also is great for spritzing down the areas that I really want to smooth out. Okay, so the clay is dry about 24 hours later, and I'm going in with a cotton spun method. I have this roll of cotton, and I will take a piece off of it, and then I will separate the layers of that piece so I have a very thin strip of cotton. And when there are people out there that do this craft like professionally, and it is amazing what people have created. If you YouTube like cotton spun toys or cotton spun ornaments or something, you can watch a way more in-depth tutorial or video on this craft. And I'm not even doing it the right way. I believe people use like a starch and not glue, but I'm just doing what I normally do with paper mache and just replacing the paper with cotton. So I just mix up a really thin combo of water and PVC glue, and I paint it on. I put the thin strip of cotton over it, and then I apply more of the glue mixture. And I'm going to do that on the ears and the face. Alright, that dried overnight, and I don't even think it needed that much time, but I needed that time to sleep. And the next morning I started in on the antlers, which are going to resemble hawthorn branches. I'm using a copper wire to twist around each branch, and that will be the base of the thorns for the branches. I also twist a little bit of wire at the base of each thorn for a little bud, like new growth growing out of the branch. And then I hot glue the base of those so they don't twist around. As you can see, I have covered the branches and buds in the air dry clay. I mixed it again with a little bit of glue, and I'm just creating a sort of rough shape of the branch. I want it to look a little handmade, a little old. I want some of that clay texture to stand out, which is why, even though I wasn't doing cracks on purpose, it didn't really bother me too much. I was able to, work around it. It kind of added to the whole ancient, old artifact look, kind of worn down. It's been around for a while, but I do wish I added some sort of extra layer to the wire before covering it in clay, and I will next time. In the end, I decided to use my polymer clay to create the thorns. It's just really easy to roll out smooth, and you don't really need to sand it or do anything. This is super sculpey, so it dries or bakes really hard, and it takes to the paints that I use really well. So that's what I did, and I'm going to cut the wires down that are on the branch so the hole that I drill into the thorn fits over the wire perfectly, and I'll use epoxy to glue them to the branch. I also mixed up more epoxy after the thorns, and I coated the base of the branches or the antlers. And if you look closely on the left one, you can see the crack over there, and there's a little bit of a crack on the right one because there's just so much weight that it can't fully handle it. So doing that with the epoxy was actually great. It helped so much. And then I am taking UV resin and I'm coating these thorns. I'm going to coat them twice in UV resin. This is so they won't snap when they get hit. because the thorn itself does not have any base inside of it because they're so thin, and I was placing them onto the wire, so I couldn't add wire. And then I am going to sand them down once everything is cured and the glue is dry, so I can prep it for painting, because the paint will just grab onto it better if it's a little rough. On to the painting. I have mixed a very dark brown. It's really just like a burnt umber mixed with a black, I think. Again, this mask is supposed to be a like forest spirit, and it's supposed to be old and sort of like ancient. Is it like a relic? Is the mask actually part of the living creature, or is it just a mask? We don't know. So that is the vibe that I'm trying to portray here. So I'm gonna start with a very dark brown, and I kind of just play around with the paints as I add colors and layers until I'm happy with it. To create the third eye, I just put a piece of saran wrap over the socket and I pressed in more of the polymer clay, the super sculpey, to get the shape just right. And so I'll be able to lift it out without it sticking to the mask and peel off the plastic wrap, and then I'll be able to bake it so it's nice and hard, and it will be ready to paint, and I'll glue it into the socket when it's all done. So I'm going in with a rub and buff. This is antique gold, and I am just putting it all over the antlers and the thorns and the buds, and then it's going to sort of pour off of the antlers into the third eye, which I'm also going to paint in the gold rub and buff. I was having a little bit of a hard time with the bright green buds. They were pulling my eye away from the rest of the mask, and it just didn't really feel like they were fully connected. So this is helping a lot with it kind of pulling back together as one whole piece. And then putting in the eye definitely helps everything balance out much better. And we are in our final stage here, where I'm taking this ribbon and just wrapping it kind of organically around the antlers, and then just lightly gluing wherever it's making contact. I'm lightly gluing that in place, because again, this is more of a decorative piece and not so much a functional mask. So I'm not concerned about the ribbon being like tossed around. This glue will be enough. Here is the final reveal. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around. I'm hoping to share more videos here soon, so if you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe. I'll be posting as I create, but that's all for now.